welcome back to my YouTube channel. So we're doing a Q&A today. I've got to get this video done quick time. So this, we've got to be really quick with the questions. I can't be taking about 4,000 years to answer each one. So this is going to be quick fire Q&A questions, questions that I've seen loads across my Instagram, my TikTok account. So these are all questions that you guys want to know about me, and here I am with them. So let's get straight into this. So then I'm reading the questions from my iPad because my phone is my camera. We ain't no techie queen over here. So obviously I can't be using my phone because that's what I'm filming this on. Here are my questions written on my notes. So let's get straight into this. Question number 1, really nice and simple. How old am I? So I am 21. My birthday is the 28th of October 2001. So yeah, 21 years old. Question number 2 then. When was you diagnosed with Crohn's? So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 18. So funny enough, I had the scan or the procedure, whatever you'd call it. I had an endoscopy and a colonoscopy on the 1st of October 2019. And then I had the confirmed diagnosis on the 18th of December 2019. There was some miscommunication. Basically, they knew I had Crohn's and I didn't for 2 months. So that was lovely stuff. But yeah, I was diagnosed with Crohn's when I was 18. This was an interesting one actually. List 3 things that some people don't know about you. So, oh, this is hard. 3 things. Okay. Number 1, I share my birthday with my brother. There's 5 years between us and we're born on the same day. That's probably a fun fact that you don't know. I was in the police cadets for a year. So I done loads of cool things. I done like the Lord Mayor show. I went on a TV show. So that was pretty cool. I was a drummer in the police cadets. Which makes me laugh. And the last thing, 3 things. I actually really like fishing. Staying overnight, fishing all night long, in a tent, touching the fish, catching the fish, putting the fish back, obviously. But yeah, I think that's something that you won't know about me either. I really enjoy fishing. Next question. Why do you have a feeding tube? This one came up so much. I was literally like, wow. So I have a feeding tube because I have Crohn's disease, which a lot of you probably sit there thinking, well, what's that got to do with a feeding tube? So I have the feeding tube because my Crohn's is in my esophagus, which is really rare. So basically my esophagus is super narrow. There's lots of scar tissue there. There is lots of inflammation and ulceration. So what that basically means is my esophagus is so narrow, and because of the scar tissue and damage caused, my esophagus just tends to like to stick to itself. So basically both walls of my esophagus end up sticking. I'm really lucky it's never actually stuck completely, because once it's stuck completely there's no going back. I'd never be able to swallow again. It would literally be game over. But basically the feeding tube is there because we like to bypass my esophagus because she's a little bitch, and I'm sorry but I need to eat somehow. So the feeding tube's there to basically bypass the esophagus because I struggle swallowing and getting food down. So there we go. That's why I have a feeding tube. In a real quick wrap up. Do you struggle with a rare condition? So yes, this question, when I read it, I was like, I'm definitely putting it in the Q&A, 100%. Literally, like, you feel so isolated when your condition's so much different to other people. Like, I have Crohn's disease, and every time I say I have Crohn's disease, straight away, bowel. How's your bowel movements? What's your bowel like? Do you get blood in your stool? Do you have mucus in your stool? Do you have diarrhea? Do you get abdominal cramps? Every single thing that people ask me, I don't have. because my Crohn's is completely different to someone else's. I have a sore throat, you know, I get really bad mouth ulcers, I get really bad pain when I swallow, I really struggle swallowing. Like, it's completely different to the stereotypical generic Crohn's disease. So 100% that's one of my biggest struggles, because it's just, you feel like you're almost faking your diagnosis, which is completely silly because I'm not. That is what I have, but it's just so different to everyone else's. Just like little things. Go Google Crohn's disease now. Go Google Crohn's disease. I can guarantee you will not see anything about the esophagus. Go on to Crohn's and Colitis UK. There will be nothing on there about you know, your esophagus. So when I was first diagnosed, for months I generally believed that, you know, I've been misdiagnosed. I do not relate to no one. There's not a charity out there that can help me. There's no information out there that, you know, can help, because everything else is about typical Crohn's. And yeah, so I struggle with that so much. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. That is one of my biggest struggles, and probably one of the biggest things that I find hard with my condition. So in your short answer, yes, I do. So then my next question is, what meds have you tried for Crohn's disease? Let me tell you, I have been around the block. I haven't found a medication that works for me. I haven't. And it's really frustrating. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2019, December time. By March of 2020, there was a bit of delay because of the COVID and coronavirus and whatever. So there was a little bit of a delay there, but I went on Humira, and I had done Humira injections every 2 weeks, and this was a huge fail for me because, one, I had a severe needle phobia and I couldn't bring myself to actually do the injection. And the lead up to the injection, I mean, I was doing it every other week, so I'd be calm for a week and then really bad anxiety for a week and then calm for a week, and it was just really not working for me. I would not do the injection, I'd miss the injection, I would, you know, work it up to be such a big thing in my head that I just thought to myself, this isn't working out. So when I spoke to the consultant about it, he then changed my injection to a tablet. So I then went on azathioprine, and azathioprine worked for me. I was taking 1 tablet every day and fine. That was it. And then they changed the dosage to 2 tablets, 3 tablets, 4 tablets, so on. And I was actually on azathioprine all the way up until about 2021, I think. I could be wrong. It could have been 2022. Let me think. No, it was definitely 21. We stopped azathioprine in 2021 because I felt like all they'd done, instead of looking into why is this medication not working, they just up the dose, and then I ended up actually having really bad side effects. And I'm not someone that gets hung up on side effects. I choose to not listen to them, not worry about them. I don't look into them because I just think everything has a side effect. I could leave my house right now and that will have a side effect to it. So I just like to not worry about side effects. That's just the way I like to be. But I found that I was getting these really intrusive thoughts, and it would be like quite dangerous. Like, I would 100% know not to do it, and I never ever did do it, but it was just the egging on in the brain. Like, trigger warning, I'm literally just gonna say a few of the intrusive thoughts I had. They're not very nice. So I would, you know, have a candle in my room, and I would have the thought of like, what if I just stick my hair in the candle? And I never did it, and I knew that was so wrong, but it was like they're egging on, like, go on, do it, like in my brain. And there was a time where I was crossing the road, and it was like, what if I just jump out right now in front of the car? Do it. Like, it was like that, and I was like, wow, I really can't cope with all of these thoughts that I was getting. So we quickly stopped that because I felt like they just ramped up my dose so much to the fact that my body was like, this is just not happening. So we had azathioprine. So whilst being on azathioprine, when we found out it wasn't working, we upped the dose, but we also introduced something called infliximab, which is an infusion. So you go to the hospital and then they put an IV cannula through your arm and you have like a little, it's like fluid. So I had a, what is it called? That's it, an antihistamine like infusion first, which took about half an hour, and then I had the actual infliximab infusion afterwards, and that took about an hour, I want to say. I can't really remember, but yeah, you just sat in a room with loads of other people who was having the same sort of treatment as you, and you just sat there having it done, and then you go home after. So that one was a little bit annoying, if you like, because every 8 weeks I would have to go all the way to the hospital just to have it done, which I found quite annoying because obviously I work full time, taking that time off to go there, etc, etc, and obviously I having loads of other appointments as well. It's not like I was just having that, I had all my other appointments to attend to, so that one was a little bit frustrating. But again, it didn't work for me. When I say it didn't work for me, how they, you know, like found out it wasn't working was because they actually done blood tests, and when they looked at the blood test, that's when they realised, oh, it's really like the levels in your blood are really low. So that's how they triggered to see if it was working or not. And again, they didn't work. So we then moved on to all the medication I am on now. So we stopped the infliximab and I remained just on the azathioprine, and then we stopped the azathioprine in 2021. Around, I want to say August of 2021, we started Stelara, which I think is pronounced as istakindamab. I could be wrong, my pronunciation, but we have started the Stelara injections, and they're just injections that I do myself every single 8 weeks, and that was fine. I had 2 doses of it, and then all of a sudden my prescription stopped and I was left with literally no medication. I couldn't get hold of anyone about it, and it just went on for so long that I ended up not having any medications until about April 2022, which isn't great, I'm not gonna lie. In April 2022, they then managed to sort it all out and I started the Stelara properly. So we done that, it was working well. I felt like I picked up the routine, and then after 12 months, after 12 weeks, that's when they test to see, hold on, is it working, is it not working? So they then done my test, and again the levels were just really low, so they introduced the Humira again. So now I take my Stelara, which is 90 milligrams every 8 weeks, and now the Humira every 2 weeks, and that's a 80 milligram injection. So we was doing that, it's going well. Then a couple of months ago, I want to say back in March, yeah, March this year, we've now upped the Humira to once a week. So Stelara every 8 weeks, Humira every week, and who knows, I haven't been tested yet, but at this point I have no idea what's going on. Nothing seems to work. I've had corticosteroids in between all my medications, and yeah, it's a process. Medication and finding your treatment is hard, and you have to have so much resilience, otherwise you end up just going insane. So if you're like me and you're trying to work out, you know, your medications or whatever, hang in there, you will find the right one. It's just a process of elimination. That's how I'm looking at it as. So with that being said, it is what it is. Next question. That one was a long one. I said it would be quick fire. Sorry about that. What were your first few symptoms? I have this question all the time. Like, everyone says, how did you realise you wasn't well? So I just felt really under the weather, like always tired. I felt like I lacked so much energy. My body was just hurting and sore. And then the main symptoms I had was I had difficulty swallowing. I had severe pain whilst and when I ate. I had a really, really sore throat. Like, when I say a sore throat, I mean, it was like a sore throat like you've not had before. It was the weirdest sensation ever. It was like I had tonsillitis, but for like every single day of a whole year. It was intense. And then I had really bad mouth ulcers, and these weren't any old mouth ulcers. They were like slits in my gums and holes in my cheeks. Like, they were so painful. So they were like my main symptoms that got me speaking to doctors, being referred and things like that, because I was just a complete write-off for a fair few years before I actually got diagnosed. What tubes have you had, and what one was your favourite? So it's been a bit of a process, actually. I had my feeding tube first placed when I was 19. So on my 19th birthday, I actually spent in hospital and basically on my own, and I had the feeding tube put in. So what one did I have first? So for one day, this really annoyed me. For one day, they put an NG tube in, and then we realised the NG wasn't working. So we then swapped it to an NJ. And I had this NJ tube for over a year. Obviously, I had about 100 in between because they break so easily and they block so easily and they come out so easily. But yeah, I had an NJ for like over a year. And then in 2022, I had a peg put in, and this was a real surreal moment, because I was told I'd have a feeding tube for 2 weeks, and then here I was over a year later and I was having a permanent tube placed. So that moment for me was a real big eye-opener, to be like, oh, things aren't going in the direction as planned. But we had the peg put in. The peg, you know, lasted well. I just suffered really bad with granulation, and it's really funny because I've never had my consultant not do any of my procedures. He's been there for all of them, and this time he wasn't there, and I ended up having an internal bleeding, and they cut the hole way too big, but it was like too wide. So I just suffered really bad with granulation with the peg. You know, it wasn't 100% perfect. And then I had a bit of an accident where the tube actually split off my peg. So we changed that to I think it's called a mini button. That works really well, and that one is my favourite because it was so small. Like, if you saw me from far away, you wouldn't even been able to have seen the tube. Like, it was so small. Changed the tube into this mini button. It's great. The only thing is, I'm really struggling to feed into my stomach now. We have now changed it to a Mickey button. So I have a Jedge port, a gastric port, and it's working well. But I've had a bit of a situation where the tube is broke on me. Definitely by far the low profile mini one button was my favourite. It was tiny, so small. The next question I have is, what's your advice for a colonoscopy and an endoscopy? So my advice would be, for a colonoscopy, don't worry about them looking at your bum hole, because at the end of the day they see so many, but like, it's so quick. By the time they've got it in and got it out, they're not literally staring like, oh, that, like, they're really not. So don't worry about that. I would probably say the prep is definitely the worst part of it. Get that prep in and try and get everything out as you can, because the more cleared out you are, the easier and the smoother the camera will go through and the less painful it's going to be. But yeah, that's my advice personally. Just don't. I remember when I had my first colonoscopy and I was literally like, they are literally staring at my arsehole, and in reality they're not. But yeah, that's my advice for a colonoscopy. I've only had 2 colonoscopies, so I can't give that much advice on there. But for an endoscopy, I am your absolute pro at endoscopies. I've had about 36 endoscopies. My advice would be, when they spray that throat spray at the back of your throat, it is absolutely vile, but try and take as much as you can. That's going to be your best friend throughout the whole procedure, because it really does numb you. So try and have as much as that throat spray. It makes you gag. It doesn't taste great, but honestly, it works. Try your hardest. I find if you hold your breath, literally don't breathe and let them spray and then swallow it all at once, it's so much better, because you don't have that retch. Another one would it's gonna be like really like weird what I'm about to say, but close your eyes and just focus on the oxygen that's going up your nose. Literally just breathe in the oxygen that's there and just close your eyes. If your eyes are shut, you can't see what's going on. Obviously you have the sensation, but the sensation is very, very mild because of that throat spray. So just close your eyes and just try relax, like just focus on that breathing, focus on that air that's going through. I personally have a lot of support when I have my endoscopies from the nurses, doctors around me, so they do really help as well. I would also maybe suggest, if you can't close your eyes, look at the screen. Honestly, it is so interesting and so fascinating, and you can literally see your insides. And I found that really helpful when I would look, because my consultant would point out to me like, this is where the Crohn's is, this is what this looks like, and that really interested me, and it just takes your mind off of it. So that's my advice for those. What's your biggest insecurity? So this is weird, but my nails would be my biggest insecurity. I'm a nail biter, I have been my whole life, but Crohn's disease and having an autoimmune disease really doesn't help your nails. So yeah, biggest insecurity, my fingernails. A question that actually doesn't relate to Crohn's at all or health at all is, how did you move out so young? So I moved out when I was 20. I live with my boyfriend Mark, and not gonna lie to you, I can't even tell you how we did it. So Mark's very sensible, he's got a good head on him, he's saving. Me on the other hand, I have to spend every single last penny that enters my life. So I don't know how we did it. I just turned around and said to my mum, I'm moving out in 2 months. And she was like, have a laugh, like, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, I am. So we actually were planning to move out in April, the beginning of April 2022, and we got this flat. It was absolutely beautiful, like new build, really modern. It was really nice. And 1 week before we was meant to be moving, it all fell through because the landlord actually changed his mind and he wanted to stay in it himself. So that was a really down moment, because we were like, oh my god, we've basically bought so much for this new flat and we aren't moving. And it was tough, like it really was a bit crap. In order for us to get that flat, we had to have a guarantor, and my dad was our guarantor. So basically me and Mark, we were earning enough money. At the time Mark was self-employed and my income wasn't enough to cover everything, so they said we had to have a guarantor or we had to have a fat deposit, and we didn't have that at the time. So we were like, okay, we aren't having this flat, we've got majority of our stuff. I mean, we literally had half a kitchen, you know, it was intense. And I was like, great, like I'm not moving out. So we ended up looking literally all the time. I personally must have viewed about 10 different flats, and none of them were giving what I wanted. And I wanted to be very specific on where I was. I think being fussy is not being fussy, it's you're living there, you've got to like it. So by the time August come about, we still was living at home, and then we've managed to save up a bit of money. We're in such a better situation. So anyway, we then saw this flat that we're in. I fell in love with it. Mark wasn't so sure. And then when we viewed it, I was just like, I love it. Like, it's got so much character. It's so rustic. It's old. It's just so different to what we have been looking for. But also it's so close to our homes, like Mark's family home and my family home. So we were like, yeah. It had a garden, like our flat's got a garden and everything. So we didn't want to have a guarantor really, because we wanted to be independent in what we were doing. So with us being able to have that time, we saved money and we put 6 months rent up front, which was a bit steep, I'm not gonna lie. Transferring that amount of money was sickening. But we done it, here we are now, and it has worked out so well. If you're looking to move out, don't overthink it, just go for it, because at the end of the day, you don't know what it's going to be like living with someone, you don't know what it's going to be like living on your own. It's not the sunshine and rainbows as everyone makes out. You have washing, you have bills, you have housework, you have every single responsibility is yours. So yeah, go and do it, but also don't be hard on yourself. If you need to go back home, go back home. So that's how we done it. We just literally had the attitude of YOLO, let's do it, who cares? And it's just worked out so well for us. So we're really lucky and grateful. That is my questions complete. I hope you enjoyed this video. It has been absolutely crazy the last few weeks, so I'm so sorry there's not been no videos been uploaded, but with that being said, I will be making a conscious effort now to be posting on here regularly. If you want to see what I'm doing doing day to day and what I'm up to, go follow my TikTok and Instagram. I post on there literally daily. I am gonna go now, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to subscribe and leave me a little comment if you have any other questions or you want to know more about something in particular. But that's it. Bye.